After entering the philosopher's study, the young man finally asks the question that changes the direction of their conversation. Where do these ideas come from? The philosopher introduces Alfred Adler, a revolutionary thinker whose ideas challenge traditional psychology and continue to influence personal growth, leadership, and happiness today. As the young man's skepticism remains strong, he prepares for an even deeper debate.
The conversation moved indoors. What waited inside wasn't just another room. It was the beginning of a new way of thinking. Although he had agreed to continue, his doubts had only grown stronger. Hidden beneath every argument was a young man who struggled to believe in himself. He compared himself with everyone, and every comparison made him feel smaller. Other people's happiness often reminded him of everything he believed he lacked.
Finally, he asked the question that would change the conversation. "I thought you specialized in Greek philosophy. So where do these ideas come from?" "I've spent my life studying Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The wisdom of ancient Greece has guided me for decades. But it isn't the only wisdom worth studying. There's another thinker you should know. A man whose ideas were 100 years ahead of his time."
His name was Alfred Adler, an Austrian psychiatrist who dared to challenge the way people understood the human mind. More than a century ago, he began asking questions that most people never dared to ask. Today, most people know Freud. Many have heard of Jung, but very few know Adler. The young man admitted, "I've barely heard his name." That doesn't make him less important. It only means history can be surprisingly selective. They once explored psychology together. They weren't enemies. They were fellow seekers of truth. But eventually, their understanding of human nature took different directions. So Adler built something entirely new. He called it individual psychology. Individual psychology? The name sounded strange, but the young man's curiosity had finally awakened. Before you can understand happiness, you must first understand how Adler saw the human being.
So, Adler was Freud's student? The young man thought the answer was obvious. No. That is one of the most common misunderstandings. They weren't master and student. They were fellow researchers searching for truth. Jung admired Freud like a father. Adler respected him, but thought independently. He wasn't trying to rebel. He simply refused to stop asking questions. Instead of repeating old ideas, Adler created an entirely new philosophy of human life. Across much of the world, Freud, Adler, and Jung are remembered as psychology's three great pioneers. Then why have so few people heard his name? Adler once made an extraordinary prediction. He believed that one day, people might forget his name, but only because his ideas had become part of everyday life.
Adler wasn't interested in becoming famous. He cared far more about helping people understand themselves. Great ideas don't need applause. They simply take root and quietly change the world. Some ideas become so natural, people stop asking where they came from. Many modern ideas about confidence, relationships, and personal growth stand on foundations Adler helped build. His ideas traveled quietly, long after his own lifetime. Something had changed. For the first time, the young man wasn't arguing. He was listening. But Adler wasn't simply teaching psychology. He was teaching people how to live. There is a difference between understanding an idea and living it. His questions remained, but something new had appeared. Respect. The introductions were over. Now, the real philosophy was about to begin.
Something had changed. The young man was no longer preparing to argue. He was preparing to understand. People often call Adler's work psychology, but to me, it is a philosophy for living. Knowledge tells you what is true. Wisdom teaches you how to live with it. The young man replayed everything he'd heard. The examples suddenly felt deeper than before. For me, Adler and the ancient philosophers are walking the same path. For the first time, the conversation felt less like a debate and more like a journey. Everything we've discussed so far has only been the introduction. The questions inside him had not disappeared, but now they were accompanied by curiosity. The philosopher had answered every question with patience. Now it was the young man's turn. The young man took a deep breath. All right, let's get started.
Every meaningful transformation begins with a single question. Before we can change our lives, we must first become willing to question the assumptions we've always accepted. True philosophy isn't about winning arguments. It's about discovering a better way to live. Sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs begin not with answers, but with the courage to keep asking.